Welcome to the second episode of Texting from the Bathroom. Today, I am sharing an interview I recorded when I was going through the Akimbo podcasting workshop, back when this entire show was nothing more than just a dream inside my head. I cannot recommend this workshop enough. Seth Godin and Alex De Palma give students all the tools and information you need to build a podcast. But the experience provides a safe, supportive, and encouraging community. It took me from zero to where I am right now. Because we were still in the middle of the workshop when this interview was recorded, you may hear a few terms that might be a little unfamiliar. My cohort was called Pod 7 because it was the seventh workshop for podcasting. The structure is built upon a combination of daily lessons, weekly Zoom calls, and extensive peer feedback. For support, you have people called coaches and other folks that they've named all-stars who are alumni of the workshop who come back to be a part of the process again. Okay, enough plugging of the workshop and on to my guest. Rob Slater is an orthodontist by day, a father of 3 boys, and the host of Dad's Sofa, a weekly podcast about everything from spaghetti to string theory. Let's go check it out. Thank you again. I know we don't know a ton about each other. I mean, I just know what I've seen on the board, but if you wouldn't mind telling me a little bit about, where you're from and about your podcast, I'd love to know more.
Yeah, my name's Rob, and I live in Birmingham in the UK. And I am in my normal job. I'm an orthodontist, and I have two businesses. That one is that's just about to launch. And I started doing podcasting more because I knew that with the new business, I may have to be on camera and do some work like that where I need to find my voice. So that was the primary reason for doing the workshop. And then while on the workshop, you kind of get swept along with the waves that come over you of the lessons and the prompts and everybody else's enthusiasm. And so you start making an imagined idea come to reality. And so one of the days I was recording, I couldn't get my environment right. It was very echoey. So I just posted on the board that I was giving up this studio idea, and I'd come back to Dad's Sofa to record there. And immediately, one of the all-stars, actually, Karen Morgan, who's on Pod 7, said that domain name is available on GoDaddy. And so I bought the URL, and then from there I started to do these 60-second pieces, which were just 60 seconds, and where you just do a 60-second audio and then post it. And the first one I did, I talked about spaghetti at the very end. And so I decided that I would do spaghetti as my subject every single day, but varying the way that I talked about it. And so I did 30 days of spaghetti, by which time I think everybody was becoming quite amused by that. And then I thought, well, actually, it got me talking about lots of different interesting subjects that occurred to me. And so that's where the idea for Dad's Sofa came from, is just sort of interesting things that crop up and that are worth chatting about. And so I started off talking about string theory, which relates to spaghetti, of course. I can relate it to spaghetti. And so we just talked about lots of different ideas. And so sometimes it could be about how music relates to physics, and why there are lots of people who are physicists who are musicians, and vice versa. Like lots of musicians are interested in physics. And so it's just those sorts of subjects that crop up and are of interest to me. And now it seems that there are quite a few people around the world listening to it. So yeah, it's quite good fun.
Wow. About how long are your episodes?
Well, I decided to do something along the lines of between 5 and 10 minutes. So it's the kind of thing that you can listen to if you're going to the shops. And so you might listen to it while you're doing your shopping, then come back home, and then it's done. And I think I might do some interviewing at some stage. So I might, if I do that, it would have to be somebody, I think, very specific. And if I do that, then it's hard to say, really. I think the regularity of my podcasts is important. And lots of people who listen say, I really like the fact that they always come out at 12 o'clock on Saturday. And so I think I want to keep with that. But if I do some interviewing, then it will probably be a bonus episode that I might put in during the week or something like that, so that people can listen to that when they've got time.
Oh, that's awesome. Dad's sofa. My dad had a chair more than a sofa. It was the recliner type.
Yeah.
And it was firmly his. I mean, after a time, no one else really wanted it because it was so worn and, old. And, it was just him and the dog mainly that were interested in it. And now he has no dad chair, and he's been campaigning for a new dad chair. The very proper couch that my mother has acquired is not meeting his needs. So so when you said dad's sofa, it immediately took me to my own father and sort of his little piece of the living room that was his.
Yeah, it's funny because when COVID hit, there'd be a certain place that I would go every day, and my wife has an office, so she would go to the office, and I would generally go to the same place in the kitchen and start doing my work from home. And so I was always in this same place, which was this sofa, and it was my wife that had bought it, and there's this furry kind of rug with a leopard skin pattern on it. And so that's draped over the sofa. And because I think with COVID, it's become a kind of Groundhog Day thing where you seem to be doing the same thing every day, same place. The sofa idea became quite fixed in our family life. And of course, it was me who was always sitting on the thing. And so not only have I got Dad's sofa, but I've even got mugs with the sort of logo on as well.
Oh, is that a leopard pattern behind you?
Leopard skin pattern draped over the settee.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that art.
Again, this is another thing that came out of the workshop, is we were discussing discussing our artwork, how we do that. Sometimes people get professionals to help them put it together. But it started with one girl who was doing something on Buddhism, and she'd drawn this really good picture of her, and she was meditating, and I thought it was really good. So I said something to her explaining why I wouldn't do it, and she said, I think you've just described your artwork for Dad's sofa. So she challenged me to do it. And so I went away, scribbled on the back of an envelope, and then I literally just copied the scribble that I'd done. And then somebody else came in and said, I think it was Jewel who's helping out on this workshop, said, Hernan Branderman, he's very good. He might help you with it. And so suddenly Hernan came in, who again is one of the All-Stars. And he came in and he photoshopped the image, got the Dad sofa with the S behind my head, and then imprinted the black into this yellow as well. And it started to look quite sort of professional, really. So it was actually an evolution over a week of various people coming in and making suggestions. And so that's how that came about.
Wow. I'm looking forward to every week. Because I don't know what's coming. It's my first time going through this process. So every week I'm like, what are they going to ask us? And I hear little snippets. So it's exciting and a little scary, but but both at once. So I'm just trying to trust the process, because it seems to have worked for a bunch of people. I mean, I look at all the All-Stars and, people who are maybe even going through the process for the second time, and it's working. So
yeah, it does. And I think that there are various sticking points for all of us, really. And I think one of them for me was that point of publishing, because you come into the workshop and you feel nervous and scared, but then suddenly you realize how safe the place is and how helpful everybody is. And so then you start to put things out there on there. And then the next stage is actually publishing it so that it gets outside this sort of safe place, and so suddenly you're in that new area of the real world. And so the publishing part for me was that one of those sort of nervy areas. But I just decided in the end, I'm just going to follow these steps, forget about all of the noise on the outside, just follow these steps. And one by one I did them, and then suddenly it's out there. So yeah, it was.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we're following along, we'll all get there in this crew.
Yeah.
So like I said, scary, but exciting, and and it'll be whatever it'll be. I'm very interested in sort of getting things out of my head and sort of out into the world. I mean, I think COVID for me kind of lit that fire, being in my house since it was Friday the 13th, actually, last March. So it's almost a year. I said, I need to do something that's more than just remote work and remote school. And I don't know how it is for you. You said you have how many children?
Got three.
Three, and they're how old?
Well, Tom's 19, so he's at university now.
Okay.
So he's in Bristol, and we've been we haven't seen much of him really. So he's more kind of doing things online, putting money into his bank account kind of thing. That's the easiest way we can help him. And we've communicated quite a lot more. And I think it's given him the value of family, actually. I think now he comes back and really likes it when he's home. It sort of really feels like a nice place to be back. Whereas I think before COVID, he wouldn't really have thought about it like that and was really wanting to get away from the house. And then Dan and Joe are, Joe's 13 and Dan is 16, nearly 17. So he's doing his A levels, which get you ready to go to university in the UK. So he's doing that, and they're quite, I think, reasonably well self-motivated. We do, I think sometimes we try to give them the choice as to when they need help, really, rather than just diving in and helping them. And there are certain things that happen. Obviously, if reports come through, then we can sort of discuss about that. So yeah, it's been a strange year because they're having some direction from school, but it's nowhere near the same. And it's been interesting to see how the different schools have reacted to it as well. Some seem to be more prepared and doing a lot more, and others not quite so much. And obviously, it's very difficult with teachers not necessarily always being able to get into school themselves to do their work.
Yeah, I don't know how it's been for you where you are. For us, it's been very localized, a lot of local decisions. So there's at least one district that I'm aware of where students are there every day with the staff. They're there. And then where I am, they're not. Everything is at home. The teachers are at home. There's some staff that I believe is going into the building for things like if the students need like a new laptop cord or they switch out their books occasionally. But I mean, there's just empty buildings all over. So I'm not sure what that's looked like or if it's been off and on for your sons.
They've mostly been, we've had during this third phase of lockdown, they've been at home, and there was a period where they were going into school. And when they were going to school, it was fairly similar, really. The schools in England are tending to follow the guidance from the English government. So there are slight variations between Wales and Scotland. The two schools that our two boys are at are acting in very similar ways in terms of whether they're closed down completely or just open for key workers, children, so people, nurses, doctors, that sort of thing. So there are a few children at school, but not that many. And hopefully we have an announcement coming on Monday, which will inform when the schools are opening again. But I think the plan is that nursery schools will start to open from March the 8th. And then there'll be people who are in the important years leading up to exams will probably start after that. And it'll be a phased return, hopefully as people are being vaccinated. Yeah.
What do you think was the biggest shift for your kids when all of this happened and they had to start making the changes?
I think the hardest time was in the very early stages, because I think they were quite happy. Certainly Dan was very happy at home. And the shift that they made was suddenly they had to be online at a particular time. And I think that can be quite difficult to get them into a good habit of not necessarily just rolling out of bed and sitting in front of a computer and then staying there for a particular amount of time. But as time went on, they got better at this sort of routine of getting up, coming downstairs, having something to eat, and then going back up. And they both seem to have found that it suits them better in a way, because they work harder in that they can get things done without the disturbances that happen in the classroom normally. So they've both found that that's been of benefit to them. And the other thing that Dan has found difficult is that he met a girl while he was, because he was switching from the sort of the main school to senior school, where he's doing these A-levels. And so it's a point where people take exams or depending on how well they do in their exams, they can then get into this school. And so there's a competitive entry into this school. So while Dan was trying to defend his place at the school, there were new people arriving, and one of them contacted him to find out what the school was like, and it happened to be this girl, and so they ended up chatting, texting. And so it was quite tricky for him, because in September, when they were all starting school, he had to meet her for the first time, and he'd known her for about 6 months by that stage. So it was quite a new thing, really. And so I think that was one of the things he found quite difficult. But they're now, getting on very well. In fact, they're actually out together at the moment. So it's really quite nice to see that relationship blossoming.
Oh my! I mean, I even hear about similar things with adults, and I said, "Wow, COVID's really bringing back courtship here, because you have to spend some time, and if you do decide to take a risk and meet someone in person, you have to be absolutely sure that it's worth it." So I'm like, I don't know, are love poems going to start coming back? And what does this mean? Because, online dating, at least here, it's thriving, but it's complicated. So it's funny. It was almost like a little sliver of that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. And it's certainly, I think that things won't necessarily go back completely to the way that they were before. I know my wife used to have to travel around a lot on the trains, and was very frustrated because as a lawyer, her work tends to be paid for by external people. So it's very difficult for people to justify first-class travel. But if she can't travel first class, then she finds it very difficult to work in a very crowded train, but needs to. So that she finds difficult. I think COVID will mean that they won't do that quite so much anyway. So there will be a lot more done on Zoom now that we've got used to doing that. I don't know about you, but I found Zoom was extremely exhausting when I first started doing it, because I found I was doing Zoom meetings sometimes 2-3 times a day. And the trying to sort of get those social cues is quite different. But now I think there are lots of things that we do now that are very much more Zoom based than they are when we're meeting each other. It's sort of like the way people wave when they're saying goodbye. If there's a big meeting of people, and if somebody's mute is on, sort of doing these kinds of messages so that people can understand. So there's been some value in it. I think.
There was, I think, plenty of work that companies were convinced could not be done remotely, that we found out very quickly that they could. And I've heard of places canceling their leases. They're not going back. So that's interesting. But Zoom fatigue it's real, even at this stage. If you're in enough of those meetings and you're looking at your own face and you're constantly looking at other people's faces, and someone does something a little strange. Were they looking at me? Were they looking at this? Were they checking a text? So there's all these other, are they even in the meeting? Are they on Twitter? Are they, you just don't know. But I do think it's created some accommodations that I hope are not going away. It's just wild to me that they used to sort of expect us to go into the office if we didn't feel well and just sort of share our germs with everyone, which sounds sort of unthinkable now. And I think there'll be a lot more flexibility where, I'm not feeling very well. Maybe today I'll do what I need to do from home. And I think that's great. I hope that's not going away.
Yeah, I think that's right. I was just thinking about the meeting on Saturday night last night, where there are 40 people, and how you know when to speak. Some people are quite good at picking that moment and coming in and saying things, whereas other people seem to hold back more, and they perhaps want to say something but don't feel like they get the opportunity. So again, I think chat is a good facility on a lot of these platforms, which help people to who are perhaps a bit shy to get their points across.
No,
as well.
I agree. I personally tend to use the chat quite a bit, especially when it seems like there's two people who are really in a conversation. I'm like, I don't want to interrupt, but I also want to get this out of my head before I forget. So just put it in the chat. But then you get some people where one of them's like, no, you, go. We get polite to the, it's almost to the point of paralysis, nothing's happening. So it's like, oh, no, you go. It's just us, even a year in, I think we're still finding our way. And some people just really took to this, I think, a lot easier than others. I will say my child's teachers did not seem to be among that group. There was a lot of even coaching that was happening from parents or even the kids. I mean, my daughter's only 7, but some of the children in her class are just brilliant with Zoom, which is just incredible. These students are having a really unique experience, that's for sure. And I think some of them will be stronger for it, and some of them maybe not so much, especially I know some children in my daughter's class need some extra help and things like that, and they're not getting it at home.
Yeah, I think particularly where there are situations where people just have not got an internet connection, so they're having to use their phones to do all of their homework. And there might be one phone between a family of sort of 3 or 4 people, and that must be very difficult. So I know there's been a few schools who have been sending laptops out to people to try and help with that. But that must be a great struggle.
Yeah, it's the same here. COVID really, I think, highlighted some of the more intense inequality, at least in the state that I live in, and surely across our whole country here in the US, that, you can give a student a laptop, but that doesn't mean they're going to have reliable Wi-Fi, that they're going to have a quiet place to do their work. And like you said, some just had one tablet that they were sharing amongst multiple kids and the grown-ups. So yeah, it definitely, I think, shined a light on some things that were always kind of there, but we weren't really talking about.
Yeah, it's very true.
Was there anything that was sort of good that came out of everyone being together? Because I know you said your wife's been home, you've been home, your sons have been sort of home off and on. Was there anything that you're grateful for from the experience?
Yeah, I think certainly we seem to value each other as family because we've had to look out for each other a lot more. We've also spent a lot more time together as well. I've missed my eldest son, but during this period, there have been some things that we've had to make do. So for Christmas, for example, we always go away after Christmas. So we spend Christmas Day, have all the family here. Boxing Day, we just spend at home quietly. And then on the 27th, we travel down to Cornwall in the southeast of England. But this Christmas, we decided that we were going to go to Cornwall for Christmas, but just as us as a family. And Tom was coming, his girlfriend was coming. So there were going to be 6 of us down there. And we'd planned for all that. We bought lots of stuff that we were going to take down. And then the sort of lockdown came again. And so suddenly we had to stay at home. And it caused some angst and even slight argument at some stages because we were interpreting the rules slightly differently, which of course everybody's doing. And then when the announcement came that it was going to be this big lockdown, it made it much easier for us, really. And so we all just agreed in the end, look, we're just going to stay here and make do. It would be silly to try and travel. So Yeah, sometimes you get used to these little luxuries, but what we actually did is we stayed at home and we just made Christmas a different thing again, and we did enjoy it. It was just very different, having to see Heidi's parents on a Zoom meeting rather than in person. So, yeah.
Yeah, we actually saw Santa over Zoom this year. Speaking of Christmas, someone made a virtual grotto, and and Santa came on, and my daughter was very impressed. He knew so many things about her before he even signed on. He inquired about her cats by name, and she was, I didn't know Santa kept track of the cats. I think I had sort of geared myself up for, oh, this is going to be slightly weird and sad. And then it wound up being lovely. And she was so excited to have Santa's attention for so long. And then she's, can I see Santa on the computer next year too? And, oh, I don't know if they're going to still, hopefully we won't need to do it that way. I don't know if this business will still be viable by then, but maybe. I mean, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, well, chances are it will be, but yeah, we'll see. Yeah, the other thing that Tom suggested that we do this year was that we had to make this sort of formal thing about watching. There's a film that we all love, and it's well known. It's called Elf, with Will Ferrell in, and so we had this thing where we sat down and all watched that as part of our getting ready for Christmas Day.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes, we are big Elf fans here as well. I think the first time I saw it, I said, I don't know why, but I just have a feeling this is going to become some strange Christmas classic for a lot of families. And I think it really has. I mean, it's been out for a few years now, but I think every year we watch it.
Yeah. Well, I actually did a podcast episode on it at Christmas. So one of my bonus things was like a Christmas film review, so, reviewing various sort of classic films. And so Elf was included in that.
I'm trying to think, what would be ours? Definitely Elf. And my daughter always wants to watch Home Alone around Christmas time, because I think that's got some Christmas elements to it.
Yeah, that's the other big one. I think those are the two really big Christmas films that we tend to watch.
And then people love to argue about Die Hard. Is it a Christmas film or just a film that's set during a Christmas party?
Well, it was included in my Christmas film review, so.
I mean, I am inclined to agree.
And then I think there's the other one is the adult one, which is The Holiday. I don't know if you've come across that one, with Jack Black, Cameron Diaz, Jude Law. So there's when they swap holiday homes.
Oh, yes, I think I've seen. That sounds so familiar.
And, there's a film. So a guy who was involved in Hollywood, who's the old guy that's the next door neighbor that is part of the relationship as well. So that's another one that we tend to watch.
Did you or anyone in your family pick up quarantine hobbies?
There are a few. I think, firstly, well, for me, podcasting is one of the things that's come out of it, of course. And another thing is that during the lockdown, in fact, behind me, there is a picture which you can see on the wall, which is of a smiling frog. And this, because we're actually doing a practice refurb at the moment. And because I was looking through Pinterest at various things that I wanted to include it in the practice, this image of this frog appeared, and so as part of that, I investigated who the artist was, and then I found on his website that this original was still for sale. So I ended up contacting the guy in Holland, and we ended up with a few emails going back and forth, and then suddenly, one day this frog appeared, and so I bought this frog, and so that's one of the pieces of work that will go into the practice. But the interesting thing is that he's doing a course as well, which I've joined, and so I'm actually learning, and he's he sort of follows through various ideas and how you can put different ideas together. And so one of the things I've decided to do is, as part of this, is to do some work. So one of them is going to be, in fact, I've started it, where there's a toothbrush, and which makes the sort of bottom half of the picture. And on the top, just sort of trotting over the toothbrush bristles, is a large hippo. And so that is going to be this sort of junction of these two strange things, but the shape of the hippo is a little bit like the shape of the toothpaste that would normally go onto the toothbrush. And so I'm calling it hippodontia because there's a term in dentistry called hypodontia where people are missing teeth. So hippodontia relates the hippo to the toothbrush piece. So that's one of 6 pieces that I'm going to put together, which will hang around the practice. So that's my hobbies. And I think, well, Heidi's done a little bit of yoga, and Joe's been playing his piano, and he's been having his Zoom. His piano lessons on Zoom, so that's been his big thing. And Dan's done a little bit of running, but he's very much into his art anyway. So he's been doing quite a lot of that kind of thing with his girlfriend. So he did a picture of his girlfriend's cat, which is really good. And I think she did a picture of our dog as well. So they've been sort of swapping those sorts of things. So yeah, it's been quite an interesting thing, isn't it? That we, without having to travel, there are these other little things that we can fit into our lives that we perhaps couldn't do before.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And for me, podcasting as well. My daughter takes dance classes through Zoom. We find ways to adapt and to fill our time and be together. Yeah. That, my friends, is our show. Many thanks to my guest, Rob Slater. Rob was one of the first people to allow me to practice my interviewing skills in the workshop. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being one of my earliest supporters. You can catch more of Rob and Dad's Sofa every Saturday on dadsofa.com. And thank you, listener, for joining today. Texting from the Bathroom is me, Evelyn Moon. Music is by Esteban Del Pino. You can catch future episodes on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever else you catch your favorite podcasts.